welcome friends once again to the NPTEL module on strategic trade and protectionism. So, where this particular week we have reached to start the exact or the core aspect of trade protectionism. So far we have already dealt many theories, many relevant theories which are essential to discuss trade protectionism. Now, from now I mean this week onwards, we are now at week number 6, lecture number 26th, where we have been trying to explain what do you mean by trade protectionism and why it is essential, what are the reasons behind protectionism, and what kind of plus and minus aspects of protectionism. So, given the fact that we are in a liberalized world, and especially in Indian context, we have been claiming as liberalized since 1991 due to many factors. So, it is our duty to understand the protectionism of trade as clearly as possible. So, the title of the presentation or the topic of today's lecture is on trade protectionism, and myself Dr. Pratap Mohanty, faculty member IIT Roorkee in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. Now, what is the background or introduction to trade protectionism? I think it is better to start with the background in the context of extent of restriction by many member countries. Now, while it is generally accepted that the free trade maximizes world output and which usually benefit all the nations, but whereas it has been observed that largely nations are actually imposing restrictions, which is against the core theory of international trade, which duly propagate for free trade. Now, so accordingly trade policies are actually advocated by special groups which stand to benefit actually many trade restrictions. So, various forums are there to actually change it. So far as the latest policies in Indian context are concerned, we need to refer to foreign trade policy 2015-20, which this is the latest policy, and the draft FTP is now ready, already released by the ministry. So, we can refer, and usually this is made in every 5 years. At a time they propose some kind of formulation for 5 years. So, it is the responsibility of the Department of Commerce. Now, what is more important in FTP? It is all about facilitating market and suggesting product diversification, which are actually the twin pillars of foreign trade policy. So, the latest document earlier it was 914, now it is 15, now it is actually 1520, 2015-20 document, and especially the draft report has already been released. So, we may refer those documents to understand the changes in the policies. So, now another aspect is related to in the document is most favored nation rate for all product is around 48%, and the applied rates are much lower than the bound rates, especially in case of agricultural goods. So, a statement a testament to India's steady and continued autonomous tariff liberalization. So, MFN is actually important. Now, regarding another addition, I think we all know it from the recent havoc, recent hue and cry regarding India's restrictions of MFN status to Pakistan, where we have abolished the MFN status to Pakistan. The simple average MFN applied tariff for all products was around 13.7% for non-agricultural products and 10.4% in 2012. As many as 69% of India's agriculture tariff lines attracted MFN and applied tariffs ranging from 25 to 50% ad valorem. In case of non-agriculture tariff lines, the MFN applied rates are 5% to 10% ad valorem for as many as 76 tariff lines. So, we will clarify those rates while we will explain the tariff lines in detail. So, so therefore, the background is on why should we impose tariffs, and so there are certain contexts by which we will understand the background. The use of tariff barriers to protect industries for foreign competitors. So therefore, the trade barriers are important. So protectionism in trade measures economic policy. I mean basically let us try to define what we mean by protectionism, how to conceptualize it. So it is all about some measures or economic steps which are imposed by country's government to protect their domestic businesses, industries from foreign competitors. So it is all about the concern of the government which protect the domestic countries in terms of the market, in terms of the product, in terms of their industries. So therefore, there are number of conflicts arises across boundaries. So one of the concern is like where politics, foreign policy and rational economic debate collide. I mean basically foreign trade policies or the protectionism arises, some sort of politics arises, some sort of conflicting policies occurs or debates actually occur over the countries under WTO. And WTO, as I mentioned, is the platform by which the member country exercise their express their willingness to trade with different countries, and they follow the norms and regulations prescribed in these forums. So trade protectionism purely is basically a policy that limits unfair competition from foreign industries. So it is the responsibility of the government. So usually these are politically motivated and usually also considers for defensive purposes. So while it has been argued that it really works in the short period, and in the long run the effect is very ambiguous, and many economists say that it is more destructive in nature in the long run, because this never facilitates better competition. More we limit through protectionism, we are constrained with limited resources. So in this context, for trade barriers are actually suggested to be working in the very short period, not in the long run. So it is also said that it makes country and its industries less competitive, as I just said, and in the international business. So what it includes? It includes government policies, as I just said, that restrict free trade between particular countries, seeking to protect the local industries and jobs from unfair foreign competition. So therefore, we need to emphasize foreign government policies. So it's a restriction to free trade. So therefore, there are further concerns in WTO, because being the member countries, if it restrict foreign trade, then other member countries might raise concerns on it. Then it protect local industries and jobs also. Now there are again strand of literature which talks about job false and job gain. So there are ambiguity as well, and the most common type of protectionism across the world is through tariff and non-tariff measures. So tariff and non-tariff measures are import quotas, subsidies to local producers. These are the most important instrument of protectionism. We will also include many advanced complications in this context in our due course of the lecture. So let us understand what are the different types of protection. Even in this lecture, we will talk about some cases, recent debates on various forms of restrictions by different governments, especially Indo or Sino US war, Indo China war, we will also consider in discussing those aspects. So the types are broadly tariffs and non-tariff. Tariffs, then within non-tariffs is quotas, export subsidies, voluntary export restraints, exchange controls, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, technical barriers to trade. We will discuss the types in detail in our next class. Now why protectionism? Now, it is as we have already said that it is the government policies which are targeted to protect the country. Likewise, we have defense in a country. Similarly, the government is also proactive in restricting some of the flows to protect our domestic countries, I mean domestic industries or some particular sectors. So, to answer why protectionism, first and foremost reasons for this is protecting the infant industry cases. So, it has been observed that in Indian context there are large number of informal industries and which and moreover these are infant in the infant stage So, so they are very less competitive, they do not have that extent of capital which can compete with the large competitors. So, in this context since large number of informal industry are there, more than 92% of our enterprises are actually informal as per the latest sixth economic census of India. So, therefore, it protects when we protect through certain policies, we are not allowing the foreign country to just to flow within the domestic boundary with a cheaper rate or with a competitive rate. The protection is very important to restrict those flows. Now, second aspect is protecting jobs. Now, what do you mean by how to protect the jobs? Now, if the industry itself is in threat and if the organization is in threat, then the employees are supposed to be in danger. Like in the present days of automation, especially in the automation world or in the robotic world, where we used to talk about IoT, Internet of Things, where people are largely dependent on technological devices and many operations are made with the help of the robots and automations or with the help of ICT. So, this has actually curtailed our engagement of laborers or manual laborers. So, so the duty of the country, the concerned country, is to protect our jobs because of the fact that we have our domestic resources, our population, our cheap labor, it is our strength. So, wherever we can engage our cheap labor for best use, we must capitalize it. Cheap labor must be capitalized and should be protected in various industries. So, therefore, protectionism is required. Similarly, it is not just jobs those are in danger or the industry itself in protecting certain micro enterprises or small enterprises, but also concerned with earning income. Now, there are various channels by which either through tariff or non-tariff, there are channels by which the country projects to gain certain revenues out of imposing tariff. Now, similarly, it is not just protecting jobs, revenues, it also protect our security, national security. Another aspect, because of the fact that national security is one of the important channels. And if the country's products are not produced, we are dependent on other countries. So, on other conditions are also expected. So, indirectly it also affect national security issue challenges. Now, what about protecting consumers from unsafe products? Often the case it has been argued that Chinese products are massively flooded in Indian market, and products in the common discussion that better to avoid Chinese product, especially in Indian context. They are very cheap by price, and those are largely dumped. And the question occurs here by quality, how safe it is for the consumer to consume. So, it has been argued that Chinese product have huge dangers, not just Chinese product, there are many other countries product also is not so safe to consume without any tagline, without any protection, without any proper features ascribed on the particular product. So, therefore, so protectionism are required, some sort of restrictions are required to protect for our consumers as well. Now, similarly, it is not just the protection for product or for the consumer or the producers, it also important to note the ethical practices or unethical restrictions. So, it also discourages unethical practices like there are intellectual property issues. So, in the intellectual property front, whoever has developed the product, whoever has innovated the product, their name or their their tagline must be protected, and no one should immediately just copy it without permission. So, therefore, certain forums are required, institutions are required, certain restrictions are required. Those restrictions should actually protect the innovator. So, indirectly this facilitates innovation. Now, once innovation is made, again how much protection to be given depends upon the extent of use of the product. Similarly, you might have heard about dumping cases. In the developing countries market, especially in Indian market, many other countries usually dump their product. So, dumping means charging low price in the international market as compared to their prices in the domestic market. So, to attract the market, to capture the market, this is one of the strategy adopted by some countries to capture the market. Okay, so therefore, protection is required. Now, similarly, it is not just those reasons. Another important reasons for protection is due to BOP deficits. So, and as we know, there are in BOP means balance of payment, which is consist of 3 accounts: current account, capital account, and reserve account. So, if there is any imbalances in the balance of payment, some protections are actually raised. So, that could help in making our balance of payment balance. Now, BOP those discussion you may search it from various other channels, maybe from internet, try to get the details of it. I think I already shown you the balance sheet table. You can follow the Reserve Bank of India tables to understand BOP in detail. Similarly, cultural preservation is another reasons of protecting goods just to enter here and there. So, as I told you in different theory also, goods are are in movement, the features are in movement, factors are also in movement. So, it is not just factor or goods, it is also simultaneously the culture gets transmitted. So, these protections are required to protect their cultural movements. Now, after having said those reasons or the factors behind some form of form of protectionism or protections, it is always our duty to understand what is in favor and what is in against. Should we go for protectionism or should we not? Now, though even there are restrictions and institutions are made, WTO is specially formed to check those restrictions, but there are various channels by which these are implemented. So, let us understand certain arguments in favor. One, though I have already said, but again to explain this. So, this protect employment, so safeguard domestic employment, protection is required, and to have correct balance of payment or to correct the balance of payment disequilibrium, protection is also required. Now, also to stop labor exploitation in developing countries or to prevent labor exploitation in developing countries, some forms of protections are also required. And for dumping, similarly for infant industries and safeguarding those industries. enable the developing countries to diversify the product, source of government revenue and strategic argument. These are very essential. Now, what are the against? Why protectionism should not be there? This is more important. In favor we already discussed, so let us count it. For against, those who are important. Now, encouragement to inefficient industries. Whenever we have protectionism, protect the industries, indirectly we support or facilitate inefficient industries. So, the productivity might be lower. This has actually undermined the utilization of natural resources. If you do not allow the resources to come in or to flow, the dynamism in the path of the movement, this might actually further undermine the utilization of resources in the world. Similarly, so this facilitates monopoly, because this also facilitates monopoly, because we are restricting the movement, we are not making the market to be perfect, we are keeping certain secret to be secret, certain concealment of facts, not by allowing the movements. The natural path is not facilitated, not allowed. So, therefore, monopoly creation is expected. Similarly, production as a claim, we are claiming as the producer, but actually in reality who is the right producer, unless you do not open the boundaries, it is very difficult to claim. But within the boundary often these claims are made, which is not right. So, similarly, there are many choices restricted to the consumers. Through protectionism, we are not facilitating the consumer to explore the variety of availability, especially in the present days, due to various forms of differentiated products which is the outcome of economy of scale of production, resulted in some form of price cut and quality differences. So, consumers, if they are restricted, it is actually against to the consumers. Similarly, inequality in the distribution of national income, the national income which has been raised due to by the engagement of factors from various countries, but if you are restricting their movement, the inequality may persist. Not just across the country, within the country also this inequality will persist. So, trade barriers are actually facilitating less distribution of income. So, similarly, it reduces foreign trade, the export and import. If it is restricted, it reduces foreign trade volume, openness aspect gets reduces. And similarly, the international discussion, if these are not facilitated, these are not opened off, corruption in the international issues will actually be higher. Then similarly, it is not just the goods and commodities or the factors that are important, it also strengthen the relationship between the member countries or among the member countries. So, therefore, foreign relations are expected to be better if it is opened up. So, it is against. So, those are the architect behind clarifying foreign relations to be strengthened, they are against to this type of restrictions. Now, while understanding trade protectionism, it is always good to refer to the context in the pretext of liberalization. So, as I just mentioned, it breaks the barriers. Liberalization is the phenomena or the situation or the context which has reduced the barriers and free of world trade. So, so the basic philosophy rests on this is principles of comparative advantage due to free movement. So, and trade liberalization have been actually ongoing for many years, especially after GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade was formed in 1947. And since then, actually because of the Uruguay round, since then many platforms are made to transact the goods and commodities across the boundaries. Especially it has been institutionalized and officially recognized as WTO since 1995. since the discussion started in 1994 by the specifically in the Uruguay round. So, Uruguay round has already initiated this discussion in 1994, that has given birth to the formation of WTO, or the institution called WTO in 1995, and which has actually been the first most the number one step, or the first most step in facilitating trade and minimizing the barriers. So, that is the phase called trade liberalization. So, WTO provides a better forum, especially in the context of trade issues, which can be negotiated and works to help implement and police trade agreements. Now, we need to actually understand in a very general context, certain other debates are very important. Is free trade is efficient? Why isn't it universal? If the first question put forth before us, how can we be able to justify it? Now, question arises, if it is if the free trade is efficient. There are many suggestions made that free trade is actually efficient. Many economists, starting from classical to the new classical, largely in the classical phase, restrictions are not allowed. So, it is the market which determines the free flow of commodities. But later on over the time, when the countries experienced with some form of business cycles, they started restricting international trade by in various forms. So, why isn't it universal? Because of number of conflicts arises, number of situations which have been raised in due course of time, that eventually force the country to impose certain restrictions. So, why isn't it protectionism more prevalent? This is not more prevalent because with the member countries, when the more member countries are joining, they are competing with each other, and so they propagate in different rounds, Doha round, Uruguay round, then Doha round, then in Cancun round. There are various rounds of WTO or meetings held in different time in different places, which consistently trying their best, I mean the member countries trying their best to reduce the protectionism. So, it is not prevalent, the protectionism is not more prevalent because of their initiatives. So, since it is a national interest groups and protectionism are very important. The answer for first this question is actually the third one, which I will just discuss. Now, in order to understand the protectionism in a larger context, certain recent debates are important. To count a few, I wanted to put forth or to bring to your notice of some of the important debates which we have observed from different newspaper. Recently, we have seen that US has huge hypocrisy in restricting the cotton exports from India, and US has raised number of complaints in WTO negotiations. Especially, let me read a few. Why India should expose US hypocrisy on cotton subsidies at the WTO round. First answer to it, US itself gives various subsidies, more than even 74% to their big topmost farmers of cotton, those are producing, but actually they are raising questions over India's subsidies to the farmers. Now, US has made counter notification at the WTO alleging the fact that India's subsidies to the cotton has actually breached the 10% limit. As per the rules of WTO, and now that is agreed that 10% more than 10% subsidies should not be given, more than 10% of the total value produced should not be given as a support or a subsidies to the agriculture. Now, they are questioning that India is facilitating more subsidies. This is especially as per the WTO agreement on agriculture. Now, US contends that during 2010-16, as per the facts, India's market support to cotton was more than 53% to 81% of the total value of annual production. This was the complaint raised by US. Now, whereas India claimed that in contrast to that, India said that the market price support has been exceeded only 1.4% of the value of the production during the same period. So, 1.4 is against the complaint made. Now, the explanation lies also in 3 variables used in calculating the domestic support. Why these confusions are there? Due to 3 reasons. One is these are calculated based on US price. First one is reason is the currency to use the calculation in domestic support. Now, nowhere as per the prescription of WTO, nowhere it is mentioned that we are supposed to calculate in domestic price. Now, the calculation was actually made in US dollar. So, on the basis of that our valuation is not exceeding. Second is what is the production eligible to benefit from the minimum price support. Third, how much units of raw cottons are required for producing 1 unit of lean cotton. It is a variety of lean cotton is essential, was not clearly defined, therefore, this confusion arises. So, while India has calculated the domestic support to cotton in terms of US dollar, the US insists that the calculation should be made in Indian rupees, but this is against the rule, nowhere it is prescribed. Where contrary to the US insists, the methodology for calculating domestic support on agreement is not prescriptive, as I just said. It provides a country the flexibility to choose the currency whatever they want. So, in addition to that, US own subsidies to cotton, as I just mentioned, more than 74% subsidy they provide. But irony here is that they are complaining, and by mentioning the fact that between 1995 to 27 US provided subsidies to cotton farmers with $38 billion through several programs, with the top 10% of the receipts guzzling to 82% of the total amount of subsidy. So, therefore, US is playing a huge hypocrisy in this particular context. So, it is not going to put India in trouble. Similarly, there are several other issues must be discussed, like 7 key issues to determine success of US China trade talks. These are again related to certain protectionism issues, like US Sino US trade war highlighted in Mint, Live Mint, January 6, 2019, that there are many complaints. US and China officials are set to begin trade negotiation on Monday. In the date hope of reaching a deal in 90 between President Donald Trump and this, while mid-level talks were actually considered. So, again largely this is related to tariff line, on various channels. We may take it forward, this discussion, these categories in our next class, especially what is made in China, why it is problematic to US, we can take it forward in detail to the next class. So, we have part of this we have discussed in our very introductory lecture, very beginning of our lectures. So, you can refer that, otherwise we will also discuss this in detail in the next class. I think with this I should stop here, we will continue in the next class. Thank you.